Hi, welcome back to MR Fishing Ohio. Today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite things, which is some of my favorite lures. Now, the two lures I'm going to talk about today are similar on appearances, but they're not as similar on how I use them. And that would be the spinnerbait and then a swim jig. Now, this swim jig is a little different than your typical swim jig, and that is right here. You can see it has a small blade on the bottom of it. So this kind of combines two of my favorite things, which is a jig with a skirt and a weed guard. I love throwing weedless jigs, particularly swim jigs, but this adds a spinner blade style to the bottom, a willow blade in particular. And this is one from Mega Bass. This is a 3/8 ounce, and I have 1/2 ounce ones as well. I really like both of those sizes. They're both good depending on how windy it is. If it's a little windier, I typically tend to pick up the heavier one. If it's pretty calm, I like to throw a smaller size swim jig. Now, what sets this apart for me from other swim jigs is that it has more action and it has a very unique head shape as well. It looks a lot like an actual fish minnow head, and that's one thing that drew me to it. I've seen this in stores in previous years, never bought it, mostly because the price tag is a little much, but I found that it does a really good job at catching fish. I had one tournament last year where this is the only lure I had with me that could get a bite. And I threw it so much all day that I actually broke the spinner at the bottom off. It was just ruined by the end of the day. But I'd caught at that point about 20 fish, and a lot of them were quality. So it had done its job at that point. And one thing that I do think is similar about these two lures is I like to put the same kind of trailer on them. Now, there's a lot of different things people will put as a trailer for a swim jig, but my personal favorite is just the classic paddle tail styled swim bait, soft swim bait trailer. Now, this one is from Venom Lures, their Donkey Snatcher. Now, this is very comparable to something like a Copycat or anything that Berkley makes in a similar shape. They're all going to be similar to a degree. One thing I like about the Donkey Snatcher is it's flat on the top, and that makes it really easy for putting the hook in and out, so it's a convenience thing. It comes in a couple different colors. I will use other swim bait trailers for these. I particularly like this one more. I probably throw this one 75% of the time, specifically this color. This color is a bluegill. I like the color to it. I like natural colors for the most part. When I'm throwing lures, I'm either going something that's very natural looking, or I'm going complete opposite end, which is something that is just super obnoxious. So my three favorite colors to throw are anything that's kind of a green or green pumpkin, purple, and then red. Those are my three favorite colors. I've probably caught more fish on those three color of lure than anything else. I just have a lot less confidence in other colors. I don't really catch too many fish with white lures as much, or blue, or other colors. But things that are green, I also have a lot of confidence in stuff in like a smoke color, if you want to call it that. So it's not really white, it's not really black. It's kind of almost translucent. That's a really great one too. But the one I'm talking about today, these are more greens, and I really like these for water that is not super muddy. It's not really super clear either. Kind of an in-between. So a place that has some visibility, but maybe has a lot of weeds, so it's not exactly super clear, or a place that has like a lot of wind. So one place I'd really like to throw both of these lures is East Harbor State Park, and then other places I've found success with that would be out in northwest Ohio, the very corner, which would be Lake Losswan. Now, the one thing that sets these lures apart for me is how I throw them and what I'm throwing them on. So for the underspin swim jig from Mega Bass, the UO Swimmer, I'm throwing that on a 6:5:1 gear ratio reel. This is one of my favorite reels. The Apex Elite from Ardent. I really like this reel for a lot of different lures, but I really like it for this swim jig because it keeps me reeling in slow. And one thing that's always worked well for me, for anything with an underspin, is reeling it as slow as possible, not burning it at all. I really find success on that. One of my favorite lures of all time is a Roadrunner jig, and so I apply that principle to this because I think of it kind of like as a souped up version of that. I'm throwing it on 30-pound braid, and I'm using a 7-foot rod typically that's medium heavy. That's what's worked best for me. The first time I threw this lure, I was throwing it on spinning gear, and it was really hard to set the hook. But with casting gear, it's a lot heavier, and the hook on this lure is pretty heavy, so you need something with a good backbone. On the other side, with the spinner baits, I've thrown them on all different kinds of stuff. For the longest time, I threw it on mono, but last year I really found success throwing it with fluorocarbon, and I like anything between 14 and 17 pound for that. I'm gonna try both out this year, see which one I like better. I found 14 pound to be really castable, but it is a little on the weaker side. I didn't have any fish break off, but it is a little weaker than you might like for some of those bigger fish. And I'm throwing that on a 7-3-1 gear ratio reel. This is the Ardent Grand, one of my favorite reels, after probably my second favorite after the Elite, just because I throw a lot more lures on this one than I do the Grand, but I probably throw spinner baits the most of any lure. So I'm throwing less variety on this reel, but I'm probably using it more. And one thing I like about it is as a 7-speed, it's kind of in between with a lot of things they make today. Not a lot of companies make a 5-gear ratio anymore. Most companies are making things between 6 and 8. You even have like 10 speed reels right now. But I really like a 7 because if I want to slow it down, I can. And if I need to really burn it, I still can do that. And I found 7 was the best one for me in the past year, and it's worked out well because I typically like to fish a spinnerbait a little quicker. I'm not someone that's just going to slow roll the spinnerbait very much. And that's because when I fish the spinnerbait, I'm actually fishing it more in the summer. A lot of people fish spinnerbaits in the fall and in the spring, but I find I have most success with it in the summer, which is a time where some people will put it down and go more finesse. And I found success where I kind of do the opposite of what the trend is in the summer, and that's throwing something really big, and I'm gonna get bigger bites. I might not get as many fish, but all my big fish this year came on a spinnerbait for the most part, and it was later in the year. One of them was in the end of July, right at the beginning of the August. The other one was towards the end of September. While as this Megabass swimmer, I use this kind of in early summer, and this one's a lot smaller profile, and I had a lot of success with that as well. I'm curious to try this one out in the spring. I didn't really use it at all last year in the spring, so I'm going to give it a go once spring hits this year. So those are the kind of lures that I find a lot of success in. Things with a trailer and a skirt, but they're very different in how I fish them. So if I'm not getting bit on one, the second thing I pick up is going to be the other lure. And after that, I kind of go through what else I bring. But the thing I like about both of these lures is they're very easy to cast, especially on bad weather days. So when you're picking out your rod and reel arsenal when you're going out to fish, one thing to always keep in mind is to have something for bad weather. I can't tell you how many times when I started fishing, my day would be ruined because I would plan to do just a specific kind of fishing and the conditions were just not right for it. You want to have reels and lures and rods that'll be good for any conditions. And one thing about a spinnerbait is I have success on that, whether it's windy, whether it's calm. And the same can be said for the swim jig. When you have lures that are more specific to weather and you don't pack a lot of variety, you can be in for a rough time. So that's the end for this video. I think something I'm going to be doing for the next month is kind of going over some of my favorite lures. I started off with my favorite kind of casting retrieve lures. Then I'm going to move into more things that are technique specific or situational, stuff like topwater, or things that have more erratic reeling, how you reel them in. And that's what I'm going to move into next. So thanks for giving a watch, and I appreciate all the support, and I'm really looking forward to fishing season this year, and getting out recording everything I do with my new GoPro. So really excited to use that. So be looking for my tournament videos coming up in the spring. First one's going to be in April. So thanks again.